And with just a little introduction, I'd like to share that I'm Christine Zips. I'm an independent natural wellness journalist and researcher and health rights advocate. I've been focusing on health impacts from wireless technology for several years. And as most of you know, there's quite a proliferation of wireless devices out there. And we're looking at the health impacts and all of that. But we're focusing on children, especially because they're more vulnerable. This radiation is impacting every living being on the planet, but our children can absorb up to 10 times more radiation when compared with an adult. So we're honing in on them and with this presentation and seeing the different ways that they're being impacted, and especially so while they're in school, where they spend some 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for the extent of their school career. So that is significant. And we need to understand, because this is coming at them without their permission, without their parents' permission, and they trust us, our caregivers, our parents, to keep them safe. And, we trust our schools to keep them safe while they're there. But this is happening, and it's just not being talked about. Well, it's really time to talk about it, so we're bringing that out, and we're seeing how we can work together with our Wired Schools network to share what we're doing in our own communities so far, what's worked, what's not, and to kind of come together to see what we can do individually and collectively to help strengthen this message in our grassroots attempt. So that's what this is all about tonight. And while we'll be discussing problems that are harming children, we're not here to point fingers and assess blame here, but we're looking to find solutions to help them get closer to the tipping point so they'll have a safer and more secure future. So that's our main goals here tonight. So I'd like to introduce our speakers, who are fellow Wired School Group members. Nichola Lake from Colorado is a mom. She's been doing tremendous efforts here in Colorado. And Brian Dobbs, a dad in Maryland, is amazing. Been out there measuring the frequencies inside the schools and reporting and doing articles, meeting with legislators, etc. But we'll let them explain more from themselves. And I'd like to get them going. And Nichola, would you like to start out and share with us what brought you to this topic and what you've been doing, what's been your experience, what's worked, what has maybe not so well, and we can kind of benefit from learning from your experience.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Christine. I want to thank you firstly for creating this group, for each and every person who's listening today, and for being here. It's exactly this kind of collaboration that gives us the tools necessary to powerfully transcend our current situation and transform the world around us. In answer to your question, I care about this topic because I came to a point in my life when I felt like I needed a reboot. A few years back, my birthday gift to myself was an intensive personal transformation course that helped me to clear away negativity and blame and all the negative emotions in my life and get to the core of who I really was. After healing from the inside, my attention shifted to what was surrounding me. All this information started being revealed, and each new thing was connected to the last. I could join up the dots and see the bigger picture. I was consumed by an insatiable appetite to uncover deeper knowledge and search for the truth throughout every area of my life. This curiosity led me to many revelations, and Wi-Fi in schools being just one of them. So like Gloria Steinem says, as I was discovering all this, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. It definitely struck a chord with me because it motivated me to action. And I was so ready to share this newly discovered information with the schools. I was naive in thinking that they would immediately want to wire the technology in classrooms once they'd read my letter, of course. and understood the severity of the risk. I wrote a very lengthy and detailed email to the superintendent, the county school board, the environmental director, and every principal of every school in my district. And the response I got was deflating, to say the least. I got crickets. Yeah. I learned that one of the principals received a reply, but I didn't. What I learned from this was that you want to send real letters, not emails. Or you can send the emails as supporting correspondence with the links. The USPS is a government agency, and everyone who receives a letter in the mail has to open and respond to it. And then take a picture of the readings that you get and post them to social media. This is the most powerful tool we have to affect change. You know, this unseen Wi-Fi, you can't see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. If people see a device that's measuring it, then something goes off in the brain and they realize that this is, you know, really something to be taken seriously. If I were to do it again, I would send a freedom of information letter to each school principal, and they have a certain amount of days by law to respond in writing. I've got a link in my stuff to the Colorado Freedom of Information request, a template that you can use. Some sample questions that you might consider asking is, what risk assessment has been conducted on this technology before its introduction in your school? How many hours during the school day is the Wi-Fi on and transmitting? How many wireless access points are there in the school? What number of smart boards are there? And also wireless devices like Chromebooks and iPads. Are children permitted to use cell phones in the classroom? Are there any cell towers or antennas on or nearby school property? And do they have copies of the examination of any educational benefit that this technology is supposed to bring to the classroom? There's a great example of a Freedom of Information letter from Alyssa Keane from Ireland that I also have a link to. I joined Facebook groups and I bookmark websites. Do your research. You know, it's so important to know this for yourself and not take it on someone else's authority. And part of this journey I've gone through is taking responsibility for the things that I know and that I question everything. I joined several groups, Campaign for Radiation-Free Schools, Parents for Wi-Fi Free Schools in Northern Ireland is one. I'm from the UK originally, so I have many connections there, and I can see that this is, you know, this is a global initiative and it's happening everywhere. I presented to the PTA, but I would suggest that it's best to host a screening of some documentary like Generation Zapped for parents, because the parents, the teachers' hands are tied, the administration's hands are tied, or they think they are. The parents are really the advocates, the only advocates for our children at this point. So if you can rally more support that way, and then it's not all on you, you share that burden and the excitement and the change. Screen things at your local library. That's often a free way to get space. And invite parents using the school-wide mailing list if you have access to one. Encourage your child. One of my children is doing a Genius Hour project, which is like a science fair project on EMFs in schools. Even though I've been deterred from taking a meter in, surely they won't rip one out of the hands of a small child. So she's going to do her project on Wi-Fi in schools and do the measurements herself and share the information with her peers. Really powerful. Myself and Kathy, who's on this call, who's also a nurse, we're putting together a table, a safe tech table at the school's health fair in April. So we're focusing on the solutions. We're taking in headphones where the kids can listen to what Wi-Fi sounds like to birds and animals. We'll bring in meters so that the kids can measure radio alarm clock, a cell phone, a Chromebook that they may use every day. And then we'll give them a little leaflet detailing, what things that they can do and things that they can share with their parents about how to be safe with the technology. So we're trying to go at it from all different angles, from top down and bottom up. I don't think, don't take no for an answer and keep plugging away, and know that this is for the benefit of all humanity. In closing, I think, we can be most effective if we take that multi-directional approach, persistently sharing with all, thinking creatively for solutions. As challenging as it is, we must always share our message with a positive, passionate, and peaceful voice, and this will reach more hearts and minds. Anyone can do what I'm doing. We are all someone special, and feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear what you're doing.
Thank you, Nichola. That was so wonderful, so strong. I had to hold myself back from nodding like a bobblehead doll, but everything you're doing and your daughter with the Genius Project, that is just so strong. But I'm wondering if we might have some interest in the group. We can talk about this later, but I know that, like, for example, Jennifer has things going on, and Brian, and that many children are involved, and Lori is a teacher, and she has said that there's some interest in the children, and she even commented to me, I hope she won't mind my sharing, that she believes that once we get the children totally aware that this is happening, and get them speaking up and basically saying, stop zapping me while I'm at school, this is not okay. If we have enough kids joining forces to do this, I agree. I think it would be so strong, and I know that there's a big emphasis about keeping children safe and not showing their faces online, and it's really unfortunate that we even have to think about that, but I do understand that's a concern, but I'm just wondering if there's any possible way that we could achieve this sort of thing. That's just something that kind of came to me recently that maybe we could talk about, maybe another time, maybe tonight since it's such a small group, but maybe during question and answer session, but wanted to put that out there. And Nichola, thank you so much. I wanted to point out that we'll have many links to related information in the comments section, and both Brian and Nichola have provided for me links with what they've mentioned, their articles, and we'll be even having the Gloria Steinem meme in there that I just think is so strong. So thank you again for all you're doing, and your children, and I mean, you're just amazing, so inspirational. So thank you so much for everything. And so, Brian, would you like to take it from here and share with us what brought you to the table and what you've been doing in Maryland?
Thank you. Nichola, that was great. I'm going to be a little bit more off the cuff. That was a wonderful presentation. And I would just echo everything she said. From my perspective, it's like we're making this up as we go along. I mean, this is a 21st century problem, and no one has ever dealt with anything like this before. And it's tricky because, I mean, wireless technology has, greatly improved communication, just everything. I mean, it's a fundamental way of modern life. And now there's research that's coming out that's basically saying, hey, wait a second, this actually isn't that safe. It's biologically disruptive. Of course, I'm sure many of us here already know all this. So last year I started developing sleeping problems. I just couldn't fall asleep anymore. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So I just did my own research and just went down this rabbit hole, that rabbit hole, saw doctors and such, and just did my own research and started getting into wireless and how, these research papers are coming out saying it's actually harmful. And I'm like, well, I guess this kind of makes sense because, back when cell phones first started coming out, there's some reports of links to brain cancer. So, and it was really just picking up from that. I mean, that whole conversation that we had 15, 20 years ago. But so when I first started learning about this, I started, me as a parent now, my priorities have completely shifted to ensuring the health and well-being of my children. I decided to take a look at the school that my daughter was going to be going into, because she was going to be entering into kindergarten. And I started talking with the parents around the neighborhood, just one-on-one sessions, like, hey, like, I know this sounds a little, dare I say, crazy, but just hear me out. So I met with a few parents, and they seemed to be sympathetic and understanding, yet not really wanting to do much about it other than just say, well, you have my support. I guess that's really all I could have asked. So I stopped doing that. I just didn't really feel like it was effective enough. I then approached the PTA of my daughter's school. I basically sent them an email, just this gigantic thing with all links to all the research and yada, yada, yada. Showed up to the first PTA meeting, and they said, okay, well, we received a lot of concerns from parents about issues they want to talk about, one including radio frequency radiation, which is nothing that we can deal with, so we just sent that off to the principal. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's a little too ambitious to tackle a PTA meeting. So then I actually spoke with the principal, and we scheduled a one-on-one. I got together with her, and I expressed what the concern was. But in the duration, in the time period between that PTA meeting and the meeting with the principal, it actually published on Patch, which is a news site for local news. I think it's pretty much nationwide. I think Huffington Post owns it, but the local paper here, I kept on trying to contact and say, hey, can you do some reporting on this issue, because I thought it was pretty serious, and they didn't have any interest in it. So I just said, okay, well, I guess I'll just try to do the reporting myself and see what happens. So I posted the first article about the elementary school that my daughter goes to, and it caused quite the community discussion. A lot of people just wanted to resort to attacking the messenger, calling me names, trying to discredit what I was saying and me as a person, just all sorts of things. In fact, there was when I showed up at the back to school night for parents with my meters taking pictures and such, one of the other moms in the classroom saw me taking measurements and came up to me and said, hey, what are you doing there? I very calmly walked over, said, this is a radio frequency meter, and I'm just taking measurements here. I'm just documenting certain things. And of course it was just like, whoa, who is this guy? What's he doing? And, sure enough, she called me a creep online. I mean, but it's these kinds of things that kind of go along with the territory, and you just kind of have to have a thick skin about it, not let it bother you. And fortunately, you go through these experiences and it kind of toughens you up a little bit. But that certainly it certainly educated a lot of people. And I agree, social media is key, because I posted it on Patch, and then once it hit Facebook, it just went viral. I didn't have to do much of anything, because love it or hate it, it sparked discussion. And that's a good thing. The worst thing that you could possibly expect is indifference, because if no one pays attention to it, that you just might as well just be, nothing. So I, like the rest of us here, I'm just making this up as I go along. I think right now I'm trying to educate the community, not just my neighborhood, but I'm trying to expand it countywide. So I said, okay, well, this is kind of a formula that's working here. So I've been working with a group here who kind of share the same concerns, and we've met on occasion to try to see what other schools we wanted to go do. And so we have a list of schools now. And basically, I'm going to go to these schools, take measurements, take photographs. Yes, do it in the daytime, get a clear shot. Excuse me. And then really just copy and paste the article to all these different neighborhoods, because I'm under the assumption that most people have not heard about these issues. So it's like I can go door to door and shake people and yell at them and say, hey, here's a problem. I could go to the community meetings and such, but it's not effective enough. I feel like by narrowing the discussion as it relates to school and children's health, that seems to be a trigger for people. And I think that people respond to that. And the most successful post I had was a post I did about my old high school. And it ended up getting 2,000 Facebook likes, which is incredible. Because not everyone who reads the article is going to like it. So I would imagine there's at least 2,000 people who don't like it. And there's probably way more who didn't like it or dislike it. So I think what we call South County, it's actually the southern part of Anne Arundel County. I think all of South County has basically seen this article. I've had people come up to me at the gym who know me and like, hey, I saw that article. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? That? Oh, yeah, okay, cool. So it's really just education. I think showing up to a PTA. Okay, so here's one thing I wanted to say. Asking permission never works. You can go to the principal. You could say, hey, can I come in and take measurements? Because that's what she did. She saw what happened with the first post that I had put online. And she said, well, why didn't you come to us to ask permission to take readings? And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't need to ask permission to take readings. I mean, who among us doesn't walk into a school with a small handheld electronic device? That's everyone these days. Who among us is not taking photos or video while inside of a school? I mean, I get photographs daily from my kindergarten teacher about my kid and whatever project they're working on. It's all the time. And I'm just coming in with another simple electronic device. I'm not causing any harm to anybody. I'm not taking photos of anybody else's children or anybody at all. And I'm just doing reporting because. And then what I'm doing is I'm challenging the community. Hey, like don't take my word for it. Get your own meters, and do it yourself. Getting back to that high school, my former high school, it caused such a community response that the principal of the school actually had to issue a letter to the community saying, due to so many parents contacting me about this post, here's a response. And it was basically, I was happy with it because, again, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. So the letter that she issued, it basically said, we don't know who this person is. We didn't ask to have these readings. We can't can't verify the accuracy of these readings. We are doing everything required by Maryland state law to protect our children. The cell tower that's directly adjacent to our school has nothing to do with our school. Like, that matters, you know what I mean? And the antennas on the water tower on the opposite side of the school are only used by emergency personnel, as if that matters. I don't care who's using it, it's still in use, and it can still be measured. And so it's just taking these measurements and educating the public about this. And if you ask principals if you can come in and take measurements, they're going to say no, because they're getting told by their communications office above to not let them, not grant permission. They don't need to be granting permission. It's just like they don't want people to come in and make a disturbance. I think Nichola, she shared a story I think recently about asking permission. I think, and the principal didn't want you to share anything else on Facebook and things like that. And that's just how it is. So I'm not going to ask permission. I'm just going to go do this. So right now I'm sneaking in legally. So what I found works is just find a public event. like schools have these all the time, whether it might be a parent-teacher association meeting, it might be a bake sale, it might be a musical performance, it might be a sporting performance. Get yourself into the school legally for just a few minutes, take a few measurements, and go back and report on it. And it seems to be working. And I keep evolving the process and fine-tuning it to try to make it more effective. But I stumbled onto something that I think is working, and I'm just going to keep doing it.
Thank you for sharing, Brian. That's wonderful. And you answered the question I had, because I don't have children and I haven't attempted to try to get into a school. I'm kind of targeting our local elementary school in our neighborhood. And I just kind of envision going in there with my EMF meter that can kind of look like an iPad or something. But I envision that I would be stopped. I don't know if they have metal detectors, if I'd be immediately questioned, why are you here? Where are you going? Who are you? I can say, well, I live in the neighborhood for 20 years. I don't have any children. I have grandchildren in New Hampshire. So does that count? But like you say, find a public event. Like we almost went to an HOA meeting that was held there. And I got handouts together, and kind of at the last minute, I kind of got cold feet, because I was envisioning, well, surely I'll have an opportunity to stand up to say a few words, and then I would like to basically say what I brought with me. If anybody would like it, they can let me know. So I jumped ahead of question and answer, but thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. And I just would like to add that, in addition to Wi-Fi in schools, there are many other important related concerns. I think it'd be good to just mention now. We can't, don't have time to really go deeply, but we can in the future. But, for example, is the school's proximity, like you mentioned, Brian, to cell towers and antennas. And I was going to post the link, the app of antennasearch.com, where people can enter their addresses, I'm sure to find out how many towers and antennas are within a 4-mile radius of that location. And it's not comprehensive. I don't think they give unregistered devices there, but that could kind of give them an idea. But another thing that I'm really alarmed about, we saw a story on the news here in Colorado where our one of our representatives, Corey Gardner, was just so excited. He was riding along on a bus in a rural area of Colorado, Deer Trail, and he said, this is so great. He said, it's called rolling study halls, where they have Wi-Fi routers mounted, usually above the driver's head, inside these metal boxes that roll along, and all the kids have their wireless Chromebooks, and all of this is exponential, pinging to get signals to the cell towers as they roll along. And Gardner said at the end of the story, he said, this is so exciting. I'm hoping other areas will, catch on. This is great. And he joined with another representative out of New Mexico, Tom Udall, and to do a bipartisan bill to get this in all school buses, not just rural. Because they say that, especially the kids in rural areas, that when they're commuting, they lose out on time that they could be doing their homework. So this is wonderful. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this is just an outrage. And this needs to be brought to light. And I'd like to do more about that. And I'm planning on doing that. But, we have many things that are like impacting the health, and there have been thousands of peer-reviewed published scientific studies supporting that this harm is being done. But other issues that are related, as I'm sure you all know, I'm preaching to the choir, but this is going to be going beyond the choir, I hope. But regarding security and privacy, like with data mining, that's a big deal with the industry. They make big money about selling to third-party investors this information on our children. And, this is just not right. Again, it's being done without informing or getting permission from the children or the parents. And I understand, for example, that there's a school in China that uses facial recognition technology to surveil the students. Their camera will scan the classroom every 30 seconds or something like that. And I understand that they explain this away, by saying, well, we're looking for emotional reaction from the students to tell if what they're being taught is having an impact. You know, are they bored? Are they excited? Do they want to know more? And maybe Lori has had experience with this. I don't know. I don't know if other schools are doing this outside of that country or not, but I just thought that was rather alarming. And, you know, there are other things like the proven connection between EMFs and addiction, depression, suicide, and violence. And there's so much focus, as you know, on the incidence of school shootings. They're trying to take away the guns, monitor for the guns. They're instilling fear. And when I don't believe that is all that necessary, but you have the EMFs interacting with the GMOs and doctors just so willing to prescribe the psychotropic drugs that have been associated with violence. And it's just an escalating upward spiral with that. And that's another thing that I think needs to come to light. And I do have plans to reach out to experts like Dr. Sharon Greenberg. I'd like to speak with her if she's willing to talk with me more about the association of EMFs and violence and depression and suicide. That I understand as far as condition-related diseases that I think it's cancer is number one cause of death in children from the ages of 10 to 19. I'm going to post a link below to kind of verify that. Again, that's disease related, and suicide, I understand, is coming in at number 2 or 3, depending on the data statistics you access from CDC, whether it's 2016, 2017. But since this is all related, it's coming on board in the same time frame that we've had this proliferation of wireless devices. I think it's not too difficult to at least come up with this could be a contributing factor